10. Monday, 11th of August, 2025. A triad of kangaroos grazing the bedraggled lawn, scattered to the crunch of the Corolla's handbrake. Thighs aching for the hours spent driving, mouth dry from the third coffee of the day, Locrian stepped out and delighted of the fresher air. For whatever reason, he'd kept the car windows closed during the drive. The Jill bounded clumsily into the shrub with the Joey in tow, while the dominant boomer stood tall against the intruder before thinking better of it, following its syntonic spouse and minor third. Alone again under the stale mid-afternoon sun, Lockie shivered to behold at the dark house, draped in the shadows of eucalypt, where it cared not for any who might have looked, its windows opaque with the blackness that told of nothing. For truly there was nothing, not the laughter of brother and sister, or the steel string jangle of the father's guitar. Just the lonely gasp of wind as it passed between pillars, gone before anyone could know it. Pretend that they're married. Pretend this is the kid. Pretend the baby runs away. Laughter. No, Leah, pretend that... Stop laughing. You're laughing. Stop that baby. Come back, baby. There was a ragged path rolling down away from the house, away from the gravel driveway, that shifted tufts of guarded grass en route to a small dam at the bottom of the hill. The road could be seen from here, but cars very rarely passed. The waters, disturbed only upon the surface by fingers of wind that weaved gilded sunlight into the ripples, would teem with yabbies in times past, but today would yield no catch. The entire expanse looked stagnant. His father had obviously not tended to the irrigation channels in his final days. Still though, in the creamy afternoon light, it presented a scene of tranquility that would have drifted away unseen had Lockie not been there to observe it. Myriad wildlife used the dam as a watering hole. Locrian picked his way between animal tracks to where an old crab trap lay half submerged in the mud. Is it a snake? Hang on, mate, don't touch. Don't get bitten, Daddy. He's okay, Leah. He's an eel. Surprised he's made it all the way to our dam. Dad gently shook the trap as the serpentine creature shifted between jolts of panic and fear-frozen stillness. There he goes. I don't really want to go near the water anymore. Locrian tossed a perished tennis ball and watched it bob in the centre of the dam. Several trinkets of a past life still adorned the shore. He found an old toy boat amongst the reeds and examined it. Was this his? He couldn't remember. It seemed like something he might have played with as a child. A blue stripe was painted on its white hull, smooth under his thumbs. It stayed afloat as he set it down at the dam's edge, a relic of childhood, adrift and anchorless in a wider expanse beyond the shore. Locrian turned his back to the dam and began to urinate into the nearby shrubbery. The wind carried his stream away from him. He'd made that vital analysis before relieving himself, and he washed his hands in the dam, shaking them dry in the winter air. Never before had he experienced such mental drain. Caught in a slipstream of memory, his brain only occasionally bringing reality back to the forefront, were he able to register where he was and why he was here. If this was true grief, then it was unlike anything he'd been led to believe. Assuming that each person experienced loss differently, Lockie wondered why his reaction was so hazy and muted. That horrific visage materialized in his mind's eye, his father's face. It was distressing to think that could be the final time he saw him. The next time, it would likely be in a wooden pile, or maybe an urn that only hinted of its contents. Your father is in there now. How can that be? Worse still was the fact that he was unable to recall exactly when he'd last seen or heard from his father. He could review his phone log, text messages, think of the times years ago when he'd last visited, but the specifics. What was the last word he'd said to him? The final turn of head as he backed his car out of the driveway. Death stared silently and offered no answer. Perhaps it was up to Lockie to remember, and the fact that he didn't left him with an incorrigible regret. He sauntered uphill, following one of the creeks that flowed into the dam as the voices grew louder around him. "Is that your father?" "Yes, it's him. How can that be?" A rotten log buckled beneath his tread. He reached to grab at a shoot of lantana to steady himself and let out a sharp cry as the nettle sank into his palm. "Damn fucking weeds! You don't belong." "Don't let it get you down, Flat 5. She'd burnt her hands in the past. That was what she'd said. Couldn't play guitar because of it. Never mind the stinging in his hand. He wasn't making music anymore. "Lockie, wait!" Scrambling up a rock, he skipped over shallow pools and felt his feet press into the river sand. He could run so much faster than his sister. "Lockie, I said wait!" Leah was beginning to sob with frustration. Kids always did that when things weren't going their way, especially the little ones. He was almost at the top, the calls of the kookaburras growing louder. "Think it's going to rain, but it could be snow at this rate." He wiped the blood from his hand onto his shirt, but it offered no relief from the pain. "It's a weed, mate. We have to chop it down." "But it looks nice." "Things aren't always as they seem, son." The crest of the hill drew closer. He recognized that same alcove that had appeared in his dream. No doubt he could see it. It had always been there. He'd just remembered to give it notice. Those trees would have been planted and grown long before he was even born. Why should they care if this one man paid them heed? Still the cries of his sister echoed on the wind, rustling the gum leaves, an insufferable din. "Lockie, stop! Leah, stop! That crying, I can't stand it! You won't wait!" He was running, or at least enacting some sort of semblance of running, a sickly stagger up the hill as his mind filled the silence with a cacophony of cries. "Wait! You won't stop me. Wait! Shut up! Don't speak like that to your sister. Wait!" A cluster of banksia trees impeded his progress, and he fought and flailed his way through the grey-green leaves, while the eyes of the banksia cones stared maliciously. Bursting through into the clearing, he stumbled, walking backwards, staring right at those mad flowers, and then the sound of her voice, loud, as though she were right next to him. "Wait!" Locrian fell to the ground with a gasp and sprawled wide-eyed on the grass. Breath came to him in short, sharp gusts, his mouth gaping for air like a caught river eel. His sister was gone, and with her too, the voices. The only sound came from the wind that swayed the wild grasses and rocked the blooms like boats on a verdant harbour. He shivered and shed hot tears from his eyes, though he was unable to say if it was grief or the inclement weather that had his eyes watering. On the other side of the incline, unseen from his father's house, the valley spread in fields of long grass, pock-marked with lichen-cloaked rocks and thickets of gum trees. There was a monument there, at the crest where the hill slipped away, a headstone with the kowtowed heads of wilted blossoms at its base. Beneath a ragged veil of weeds sat an old deck chair, as though someone had sat by the grave in the past. Pulling himself to his feet, an anchor hauled from the sea, Locrian stood, bewildered, trying to understand the presence of the headstone in this forgotten corner of his childhood grounds. Its worn stone bore no name, or at least none that was still legible, and given its appearance of having been there for quite some time, Lockie was perplexed as to who it had been erected for. He imagined his Anima, the woman from his dreams, standing at the headstone, the wind carrying strands of her hair, the afternoon sun casting contrast on her profile, half lit, half shadow.